Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel and welcome back to another round of Basis Picks. As always, please like and subscribe, share with a friend, a colleague, a relative, an associate, an enemy, any and all in between. It's appreciated. Hasn't been much going on this week. I'm trying to stay away from certain topics which don't really need my input, shall we say. There's no British cards on that I am aware of. There might be a couple small hall shows, but I won't really cover any of those. There's a few fights taking place in the States, so I'm going to kind of just speak about there's a Golden Boy Promotions card and a Top Rank card. It's going to really cover sort of the main fights on those particular cards. Yeah, I don't expect a huge amount of traffic on this one, but it is what it is. I thought let me get something out before we get to the weekend wrap. So without further ado, let's get to the fights. While doing this, I'm not going to split it individually into the cards like I would normally do. I'm just going to speak about all the fights like just one after the other, but we'll start with undercards and sort of move to the two main events at the end of the video. So the first undercard fight to really sort of have an interest in is on the Top Rank card, which is Lindolfo Delgado against Brian Flores. Now, you know, on paper, Lingardo's 20-0, 15 KOs. You know, you would think that that is particularly gonna be a run-of-the-mill type fight for him. Brian Flores is 26-0-1, so no defeats either, one draw, 15 KOs as well. So you would suspect that Delgado's got a little bit more power, I guess, per capita if you're looking at it from that perspective, but Brian Flores does have a bit more of the experience in the ring, although I don't know if I would say he's got experience at a higher level. I feel that both of their levels are fairly fairly similar in quality. Flores is the older of the two. I think he's 28-ish, and Delgado, how old is Delgado? I'm trying to remember how old he is. Actually, I could be mistaken. I think Delgado's 28 as well, or possibly 29. So he might be the slightly older. Started his career, I guess, I won't even say he really started it later. Just you know, Flores kind of had more opportunities to box at a lower level sort of earlier on, I suppose. But look, in terms of that fight, I haven't really got a huge sway either way. I do think Delgado is going to take it, and I do suspect it to be a points decision. I don't think he'll get a KO in this one personally. I'm pretty sure I'll put KO in my predictions league, but now that I'm kind of thinking about it, I feel like Flores is probably going to be pretty durable and he's going to run Delgado pretty close. So yeah, like I said, no technical breakdowns on it. I just think that yeah, I think Delgado will sort of take that one. Now, outside of that, the only other undercard fights that I'm looking forward to, obviously there's Charles Conwell, Kenneth Sims Jr., and I think there was one other person that I was interested in whose name I can't remember off the top of my head, but they're not really in significant fights, if you put it that way. They're you know, they're kind of keep busy-ish fights. I wouldn't even really call them step-ups. They're just sort of there. So I don't expect them to have much trouble in those particular bouts, and if they do, then that's a pretty bad indictment on them realistically. So yeah, not really going to talk about those. What I do want to talk about, Cecilia Breakers, the First Lady versus Marcela Conejo. Now, initially, Celia was supposed to be facing Emma Kozin, but apparently Kozin couldn't get a visa into the States in time, so Marcela Conejo became the opponent. If anyone recognizes that name, she faced Clarissa Shields last year, June, at the one of the centers in Detroit. I can't remember the name of the stadium, but it was one of the Detroit, Michigan stadiums, well, arenas, sorry, I should say. She's fought, I think, 2 or 3 times since then. She's been pretty active, whereas Cecilia, she's only had the one fight which she had with Terry Harper back last year, which I think took place in September or October. So think it was September. So yeah, she hasn't really been active. She was looking for that rematch. That rematch didn't happen. But she's in the 154 division, and now is, instead of fighting for the full title, it's an interim version of the title, which puts her as the #1 challenger to Emma Kozin. This is a tricky fight to kind of work out, because you look at, obviously, Cecilia Braekhus is a 37-2-1. Obviously, the draw was her very last fight, and Maricela Conejo is, I think she's like 19-6-2 or some kind of record like that. And realistically, she should be quite easy for someone like Cecilia Braekhus, but she's been active. Not only has she been active, like, she has been sort of, I guess, trying to work on her craft. She's got pretty good movement, to the point, you know, Cecilia isn't as mobile as she used to be. So this is all going to be about, can Cecilia work behind the jab the way that she's been accustomed to over the rest of her career, or can Maricela, can she disrupt that rhythm? Can she disturb sort of the pace? Can she up the pace and make Cecilia have to work? Because obviously, if that's the case, you know, the older body, the less activity over the last couple of years, you know, maybe not so much the wear and tear, but that can all kind of drain on, you know, those older legs, those older lungs. But when I look at the bout, outside of a stylistic point of view, where I do think Cecilia is stylistically tighter, she's got some advantages in terms of, there's a little bit of height and reach in there. Maricela is going to be pushing the pace, and if she is able to push the pace and push the pace well, she's got a very, very good chance of winning this fight. But I'm going to trust that Cecilia's skills hasn't regressed that much over the last year, to the point she should be able to control this bout. So I'm going to predict that Cecilia does win this one on points. But I think it might end up being run quite close, either 97, 93, 96, 94. I wouldn't be surprised if there's a split card, like an even card in there, and it ends up being a majority decision instead of a unanimous. But I'm going to give it to Cecilia Braekhus on points, just based off of the experience. Okay, so next we've got Gabriela. We've got Gabriela Fundora facing off against Daniela Asenjo. I think Daniela is 16-3-3 as a fighter, and Gabriela is 13-0 with 6 KOs. So Gabriela, very tall, very rangy for flyweight. It is quite impressive how she is able to make the flyweight division, same as it's impressive how her brother Sebastian is able to make like super welterweight, standing at 6'5", and her at the height of 5'9". How she gets into a flyweight frame is quite, you know, it's quite impressive. But to be honest, she doesn't struggle at all. It's not like, oh, she's killing herself to make weight. She makes weight very comfortably. But at the age of, what is she now? She's 22. I know come 25, 26, I feel like her body's going to fill out, and she's going to end up probably at super bantam, maybe even featherweight by the time she's like 26, 27, because she's definitely got the frame to add extra size on, and I can see her climbing those weight divisions sooner rather than later. But at the, you know, at 5'9", 112 pounds, she's got many advantages over a lot of her opposition. She's a southpaw. She's got much longer reach than her opponent. She's got more power. She definitely is able to generate more power, and she knows how to keep opponents on the outside of the jab. Now, yeah, I remember in her, not the last fight, it was a fight just before that with the Olympian whose name has dropped out of my head all of a sudden. I remember she had a bit of issues figuring out the range and the distance in the first couple rounds, but was able to get into range and start working that body, and ended up dealing damage in that fight towards the end. Now, I don't think Asenio's gonna pose her much problems. Asenio's gonna try and basically gonna try and swarm. She's gonna swarm in. She's gonna jump out of range, and she's gonna jump into range and try to sort of let a couple of flurries or big combos go in the pocket. That's not gonna bother. That's not gonna bother Gabriela. That's the kind of thing that she's used to seeing. She's used to experiencing, and I can see her using that jab to keep Asenio at bay. I'm not sure if she's gonna get a stoppage. She could do. I can see every conceivable way that this fight ends in a referee jumping in, but I don't see anything other than a very clean and clear Gabriela Fundora victory. So I won't predict the method, but she's gonna win. That's what I'll say. I'm gonna cop out of that one in terms of predicting how it ends. But yeah, I do think that she gets the victory, and however it is, it's pretty much gonna be emphatic. Right, so moving from there, we've got the two main events. So the first one is Luis Alberto Lopez versus Angelo Leo. Now, Luis Alberto Lopez, I believe, is 29-2 as a pro, or maybe 30-2, it's one or the other. And Angelo Leo, I know, is 24-1. Now his one loss was to Stephen Fulton. That was about, I think, 6 fights ago. And obviously Lopez has been at championship level for much longer. Obviously Angelo Leo was kind of moving up to the 126 division a couple of fights back. So he's the relatively newbie here, whereas, Lopez has kind of been here and been in the wars with the more experienced opposition. Now, being in the ring with someone like Stephen Fulton definitely does hold you in good stead in terms of top level experience, but I feel that the higher pressure situations that El Venado has been in is ultimately going to hold him in better stead to be able to deal with this occasion better. And as a bit of a side note, this is a pseudo Top Rank versus PBC crossover fight, and we know how those usually play out. So with all of those factors in play, as well as the way I think the styles are going to play out, and the fact that obviously Lopez is the naturally bigger guy, tends to be a lot busier, and is going to look to throw a lot of power behind most of his shots, especially early on, I can't see anything but a Lopez victory. I think he's going to take it on points. I don't think Leo's going to he's going to end up getting stopped in the fight, but I do think that Lopez will take this one and take it quite comfortably on points. Over the 12, I can see it being sort of like a 116, 112, maybe a 117, 111. I really can't see it being closer than that personally, but yeah, stranger things have happened. Now, moving to the main event of the weekend, which is really one of the most intriguing fights, is Serhii Bohachuk against Vergil Ortiz Jr. 154-pound interim WBC title match. The winner of this fight, now it's weird because the winner of this fight is supposed to then be the mandatory for Sebastian Fundora, but Terence Crawford fought in the fight against Israel Madrimov last weekend for the WBO interim title, the WBA light middleweight title, but also the #1 ranking in the WBC. So does that mean that he'd have to wait until after they fight, or is he the next mandatory? That's the thing that I'm not quite sure of, but I'm sure we'll find out down the line. Anyway, looking at this fight, it's clear who the bigger man of the two is. Like, Serhii Bohachuk is, I believe he's about 5'11", maybe just under 6 foot scraping, whereas Vergil Ortiz is sort of just, I think he's like about 5'9.5", 5'10 ish. He's around sort of that height. You can tell in the frames that Bohachuk has got the sort of the longer, slender, leaner body, whereas Ortiz is a bit more like stocky in his frame. But he made the weight comfortably from what it looks like. I'm not sure if it was a proper weigh-in or if it was the ceremonial one that they did. It did look a bit ceremonial-ish, to be honest. I don't know how he looked maybe earlier on in the day, but he looked pretty good in at the weigh-in. He made the weight, no issues of the rhabdomyolysis pulling up, so I've got to assume he's okay in that sense. So when you look at the fight playing out, Serhii Bohachuk he's got the range advantage, and he likes to throw straight punches. That's his bread and butter. The straight 1-2, sometimes from the angle, sometimes popping up from a level change into that solid jab, followed by the straight backhand, and that's normally how he gets how he sort of overwhelms and, you know, makes his opponents feel his power. Now, Vergil Ortiz is a person who's more going to look to employ hooks, uppercuts, and get closer into range. He might use the jab just as a decoy to get into range, so he can throw something over the top, or overhand right, or something of that nature. Now, with all of that, I feel as if you look at the Brian Mendoza fight, which is the only fight Serhii Bohachuk has not knocked an opponent out during victory, you saw that he got rocked in that fight on a couple of occasions with a cheeky uppercut that he didn't see coming. That is Ortiz's bread and butter. Now the question is, can Ortiz get into range? Can he get inside of those longer arms of Bohachuk with enough regularity to be able to cause damage, and can he do the damage from early on? My suggestion is that he can, because Bohachuk, while he's actually got good defense, he will punch if it's safe to punch. When it's not safe, he'll have his arms holstered, he'll try and cover up, he'll get into defensive positions. He won't punch with you, whereas Ortiz will. So if you're unleashing a 1-2 on Ortiz, he'll try and throw as you're throwing. Yes, it can be a risky maneuver, but the fact he's doing that means that whatever force comes your way is doubled in impact, because you're the one stepping forward at the time. He won't always keep his arms holstered, and I think that's where he's ultimately going to be able to catch Serhii Bohachuk, and probably sort of somewhere in those middle rounds. It's gonna be his biggest test. It's gonna be his hardest fight. You know, when he faced Mean Machine gave him some big problems. Put him under some duress. Even when he faced Maurice Hooker, that one, you know, there was a couple of slight problems within that one as well. Nothing major, but you know, there was things that you could tell that has he been working on these strategies, has he been working on his defenses. It's also Robert Garcia against what's his name, Manny Robles as trainers. I think that's going to be an interesting clash as well. But ultimately, I do feel like Vergil Ortiz has got more power than Bohachuk per punch, and I feel like he's not going to have to land as many to be able to affect Bohachuk. Now don't get me wrong, I think he's actually going to get hurt in this fight in some way, shape or form. I don't think it's going to be hurt like, oh, he's rocked all over the ring, but he's going to take a punch that makes him have to be cautious, and maybe gives Bohachuk some additional impressions on the rounds. But I do think that when it comes down to it, in the roundabout, I think round 7, I think around round 7, he's going to get through with something big that Bohachuk can't recover from. I think Bohachuk could get knocked down maybe once, possibly even twice, and get up, but I think that the referee will wave it off in and around the 7th round. So my official prediction is Vergil Ortiz to win via 7th round KO. Please leave your comments down below. I understand there won't be a huge amount on this one, but it's all good. But yeah, catch you guys on the weekend wrap tomorrow. I might even do a live stream afterwards, depending on what my schedule is like. But yeah, we will look at that moving forward. But for right now, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe and share. I really appreciate it. That's Basis Picks locked.